In this video, I'm going to show how to create these sci-fi host connections with Plasticity. So come join me. Okay, here we go. So this is an existing one I created prior. I'm going to be doing something similar to this. This again is a beta of the program. It's almost there. Next month is supposed to be a full-time version. So let's get started. Alright, so when I'm in here, I'm basically going to start off with a cylinder and create that, and then I'm going to actually take that and extrude it after I create it, of course. So I'm going to take this and bring it up somewhere where I think it should be. You can dial this in as much as you want, or just eye it. So that's that. Alright, so I'm going to now take this object and cut it down the center. So I'm going to again get the cylinder and I'm going to bring this out. I'm going to give it a little bit of section there to work with. So created that. Now I'm going to delete this last one and use this one to cut through. So what I could do here is just basically select this item, this object, and go into the cut solid with this line. So that cuts it. Say OK. And now you can delete this inner section if you want. Alright, so that's that. So now I'm going to go to the side view and I'm going to create a cut in this unit here. So to do that, I'm going to use the actual corner rectangle tool. So I'm going to bring this through, say about here, and then I'm going to go back to say OK, and now I'm going to actually go to the point tool, and what I want to do here is actually make this a curvature, so you can kind of see what you're doing here. I'll just do all four of them. Let's try to see, there we go. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to tighten this up a little bit, like that. Right, so that's that. Now I'm going to hit the actual. These are the different keys. You got basically a point selection, you have the line selection, and you have the face selection, and then you have the object selection. These are the most used buttons really to get around. So now that I'm on face, I'm going to take this, I'm going to actually extrude this all the way out. And say OK. And then I'm going to take these two curves, get rid of them. There's no need for these anymore. Delete those. And then I'm going to take this object here and go back to the top view and see what I'm doing. So I just need to basically move this item here. So I'm going to go down to the move. These are your other tools, which are move, rotate. This is scale. This is your boolean. This is like a cut tool. This is mirror. And this is duplicate objects. And you can actually see the keys here. They tell you exactly what letter to use if you want to use your keyboard instead. So it's just real easy. So to move this, normally I just hit the G key, and then you can actually move it. Or, of course, you can just use the move tool. So once you move it and like where it's at, you hit the OK button. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to mirror this so it's on both sides. So I'm taking this, and I use this side because it's opposite side. It goes to that side. So this is where it's going to cut in the object. Alright, so now I'm going to select the main object, which is this one, and then hit the shift key and hit these two sections. I'm going to hit the boolean. Again, that shortcut key is Q. So say OK. There we go. So that looks kind of cool. So I'm going to go with that. So now that I have a curvature on here, that's all curved, it makes it easier to do the deflay on this thing. So I'm going to hit the line tool. I'm going to select the outer and this outer, hit shift key again, and then pull this. Now if you go in the negative direction, you're going to actually do a jumper. If you go in the opposite direction, you're going to be getting a fillet. So it depends how rounded you want it. I'm going to go with that. Say OK. And now I'm going to actually go back to this tool here, the line tool again. I'm going to kind of change this. So I'm going to do a actual, on this section here, a chamfer, which is again negative. Say OK. And then you go back in and actually add, hit Shift key. And now I'm going to do the fillet. So that way it actually has a nice rounded edge to it. Okay. So still need to do the inner, but I'll do that. Well, so you do that now. A little bit there. There we go. Say OK. All right, so now I'm going to create a thing for the top to go around to make some type of cool looking cuts. So here we go. This time I'm going to actually use a line tool. There's different things you can do, of course, but I'm going to go with something like this and kind of add an angle just to make it look more sci-fi-ish, I guess you'd call it. So now that I got this created, I'm going to actually hit the poly and bring this up like that. Say OK. Now, to make this exactly centered, I'm going to go back in here, hit this, and I'm going to cut it down the center. So one thing I got is to snap it to grid or not. It's up to you, but this way this thing will snap. Actually, I don't really need to snap to grid, but just a snap to the thing here. So that's it. So let's do this again. Line tool. I'm going to go farther back this time. Here we go. Now, that tool. Use the cut tool. And let's use that one. Say OK. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to delete this one. And this one I'm going to mirror. There we go. Now that I got these both selected still, I'm just going to hit this, and then I'm going to hit the Q key. That way they connect together. And now hit the OK. Alright, so let's go back to the right side view. I'm going to scale this up, or bring this up. So hit the Move tool. Bring this up to there. Right tool, get this lined up. Alright, so there's that. Alright, so now if you want to get a little bit more of an extension, you can actually just select the outer face. First of all, say OK on that. Let's hit this, and now I can move this out like that. Okay, so that's cool. So then I'm going to go to the top view, and then I'm going to create a bunch of these things. So let's select the object again, and we're going to do a radial array, which is down on the bottom right side, right there with the 3 round sections. You can hit the center here, and this is where you can actually play with how many you want. I'm going to add this up to probably, put it go backwards with 12. All right, say OK. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do kind of a different design. So you got your main cuts there. I'll probably be using them more on this side. So I'll do 3. I think I'll do 5 on one side, 3 on the other side. So I'm going to take these ones away and delete them. And that would do it. And then I'm going to get this. First of all, before I do that, one thing I should have done actually is done the curvatures on all these in the first place. So let's go back. It's real simple to do. I'm just going to delete these things. Spend a lot of time redoing everything. You just delete all that. Delete this one. Now, first of all, let's do this before we go there. Now I'm going to select the edge tool in here. And one thing I have is the see-through set up, so you can see what you're doing. Hit both of these. Now let's rotate it around. Make sure it's in the plus. That way it's a nice curvature. Let's say OK. And I've done that. It'll save a lot of time down the road. Another thing is I'd like to do the bottom too. So let's just do Let's just do this. Curvature. Okay. Gives it a nice round look. All right, there we go. So let's do this again. Back to the top view. Do the radial array again. Select the center. And again, we're going with 12. Say OK. And again, we're going to delete these 4. So as I continue to select these, I'm going to delete them. All right, there we go. So now hit the main one, and then hit these other ones, and cut all these out. Now, if you don't like what you've done, you can always go backwards, just undo. So here we go. Now, Boolean. Boom. Say OK. Here we go. Cool. All right, so that's that. All right, so now I'm going to actually add a fillet to the actual edges of these cuts. So basically, I just used the line tool, and I'll select each of the edges on each of these objects. As long as it's all curvature, it's not a problem. If it's any edges that are hard, then it won't go all the way around properly. So let me select these. This. And that, and then I'll go on and pull it. Make sure it's in the positive if you want a fillet, or if you want a chamfer, go on a negative. I'm just going to give a little bit of an edge here, something like that, 0.0662. Say OK. That's that. All right, it's starting to come together here. All right, now I'm going to add in some cuts along this edge here to make it look nice. In the side view. Basically what I'm going to do is use the circle tool again, go to the top view, and then I'm going to cut this in. Let's just do a curvature circle. Okay, so I'm going to use a cylinder here. I'm just going to say OK. I'm going to select this, select that, and then I'll pull this up. So what I'm going to do here is actually create this all the way around. I think I might increase this a little bit bigger. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit longer too. I'm going to try to get close to the edge of that base. So close to that. Okay. And I'm going to actually make it a little bit bigger. So I'm going to go back to the Z axis. First I'm going to say OK. I'm good with that for now. Select the object tool. Select this. Now let's go ahead and scale it up. You could use this right here. That will actually scale on those both axes. It won't scale up or down. So I'm going to do this here. Make it a little bit bigger. Okay. This looks good. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this and do a radial array. So go to the Z axis on the top here. Use this radial array tool on the bottom right, and I'm going to select the center, and it automatically comes with 8 every time. You can adjust that as much as you want. I'm going to kind of get it somewhat close together. Let's go with something even. 20 looks good, so say OK. And now I'm going to actually go in and adjust some things. So what I want to do is I want to take all the ones on this upper edge where it goes all the way up, select those. Actually, there's 3 of them on each side. So hit the Shift key, and then these 3 over here. And I'm going to actually hide those. So H key will hide them. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and go back to the selection mode face tool and select each of these around this on each of these cylinders. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring those down basically. All right, so let's go back to the Y, and then I'm going to start bringing these down. I'm going to go right below that as well. similar to that. All right, so that's good with that. Now, one thing I'm going to do is these are all way too far down. Unless you want to cut it on the bottom base, that's fine, but I prefer not to. I'm going to bring those all up, so I'm going to say OK. Again, select all of these circles on these cylinders. All the way around. And then I'm going to bring those up. Now, I could have done this with the other ones also unhidden, which might have been a better way to go, but that's okay. I'll line it up anyway. Something like that. Say OK. So I'm going to unhide these now too. You see here, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one, that one. Unhide those. And again, I'm going to do the same thing that I just did over there. Select the base of the cylinder. Now I can get rid of these curves. Just delete those. They're in the way. Okay, select that. This, this, this. All 6 of them. And go back to the Y. That way you can line these up exactly. So if you bring it up, you can match it. Like I said, you can do them all at the same time next time. A little bit better that way you don't make a mistake or it's off. You can eye it. So say OK. That's good. All right, now what I'm going to do here is I'm actually make all these tips circular. So I'm going to select the line tool. Select every one of these, including the top ones. That one I didn't want. Control. Hit the Shift key. Continue to hit Shift key. Shift. Hold it down. Now I want the bases to be the same, so that way everything is more rounded. Whoops. Control key. Hit the Shift key. Yeah, you gotta be careful. All the way around. I'll make sure all the circles are selected. Do this process. Okay, so you got all the bases, got all the upper ones. All right, so now I'm gonna, you can of course do a chamfer if you want, or a fillet. So I'm gonna do a fillet. So I'm gonna go the positive way, make it more of a circle. Kind of like, we'll go with about there, 0.6516. Say OK. Okay. Here we go. So now this is the test of if it looks good or not. We're going to now go in and select the main object first, which is use the object tool. Select the main. And now we're going to start going around hitting the Shift key. So we'll go all the way around. Continue with the Shift key. Shift key. All the way around. Okay. Make sure you get them all. Now hit the boolean tool on the bottom left side. It says boolean or Q. Hit that. That's basically what it's going to look like. So I'm good with that. Say OK. Makes a nice rounded edge. Okay. So what I'm going to do also on this is actually add a little bit of a chamfer on this base. So let me select this. And now I'm going to go the opposite way. Like that. Looks good. Say OK. I'm going to add a little bit of a fillet to all these edges, just to give it a nice, make sure it's in plus. It gives it like quite a bit of roundness to it. That way you got an edge and round, which makes it look nice. Okay, that's good there. So next, I'm going to be putting in a a ring around this just to give it some variety. Some of the ones I did before. So I'm going to hit the rounded tool here, the circle tool, go to the Z-axis. I'm going to try to line this up right on the center, of course, just right in the center of this. This way when I put the disc through, it'll be right in the center of that. I'm going to go about there. Okay. Say okay. Now the next step is to go to your either Y or X, bring it down, and I'm going to use the move tool down here in the bottom. Bring this down to about center of that. Okay. So basically it's going through that center of that. So now I'm going to use the actual pipe tool, which is this tool right here. And of course it's way too thick. It always defaults to 0.05. We'll probably use like maybe 0.2 or 0.3, or we'll see how it looks at 2. Wait for it. It's a little too small for me. I'm going to go with 3. Click off of it. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to go with say OK. Alright, so now to cut this out, select this object. Now select the tube and hit boolean again with or Q, but this time keep tool. Say OK. Alright, so now it's its own separate object. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of roundness to each of these cuts. So hit the line tool. Just select each of these edges on both sides. Shift key. Shift key. Again, it's not selecting the whole thing, but since it's rounded, it'll go ahead and select. It'll get all of it when you do the fillet. Make sure you get both sides. Again, if you miss one, you could always go back. It's just easier if you do it the first time right. It should have an even number because you're doing basically 2 sides on your selection. Let's see here. We got 2, 2, 2. That's 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. 16 of them. Okay, got them all. Alright, so now I'm going to use the fillet tool. So I'm going to go in the plus. Equals the negative. See how it's sharp? Go quite a bit lower than that. Alright, looks good. I think I like that. Gives it a little bit of variation there. It looks like it's meant to be like it's actually going through that. So I'm going to say OK. So that's that. Alright, what else can I do to make this look different? So what I could do is add some more stuff into the inner. Actually, I'm going to put some cuts in here like I did on the other ones. So I'm going to use these edge lines here just to give it a nice look. Right, so I'm going to select this, basically. I'm going to Shift D it, which makes it a copy. I'm going to bring this up. Simple as that. And then I'm going to hide this other objects. Hide it. That way I can work with it. So I'm going to go back to the Z-axis. And I'm going to cut this, basically. So I'm going to use the line tool, so this way it actually will be not to the very edge, of course. So like that. Right click. And then I'll put that there for now. And then I'm going to use the circle tool. Bring that in. I'm going to cut it right along, not exactly to the edge, but close. It's one center cut. And now hit the circle tool one more time. Say OK, of course. Circle tool, like that. Something like that. Okay. Say OK. So now that's done. I'm going to actually go back to this object tool. See how it's selected. Go back to your Z. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this cut tool. Use this. Say OK. So that's done. And now I'm going to go back to the object tool. Delete this. Delete that. Select this again. Hit the cut tool. Hit that. Say OK. Hit the object tool again. Hit the cut tool. Hit that. Say OK. Alright, so now I can just delete these. Delete. Delete. And you can just get rid of all these curves. Delete. Alright, there we go. So that's that. I'm going to hit this tool. Select the face tool. And I'm going to Control Z. I'm going to hit the extrude tool. Bring it up. There we go. And I'm going to make this more rounded on the edges. So I'm going to hit all these two right here first. Use the fillet tool. Make it nice curvature. Say OK. Same thing here. I'll try to do the last one at this side back first and then the front one so I can see what I'm doing. And then see it's more of a rounded edge right there. Okay, I went with 02285. Say OK. Another thing you can do is you can, now everything's rounded, you could actually select this one of these edges and again do a fillet and it makes it round. If you had an edge sharp, it won't do it properly. Say OK. Alright, so that's that. Now I'm going to unhide of these. I'm going to select the object tool here. And I'm going to use the move tool to bring it down into the shape. Looks good. Now I'm planning to do the same thing on the opposite side. So I'm going to go to the Y axis. It could go to X as well. I'm going to use the, X. And then I'm going to do a mirror tool. I'm going to use the freestyle. So F. I'm going to hit the center of this basically and just basically go down here. That's it. Say OK. So it's kind of centered it. Now I'm going to take this object, move it upward. Go on again. See how far that's down? I'm going to do the same thing on this one, pretty much about the same. Like that. There we go. Now that I got that selected, I'm going to select these two. I'm going to also hit the mirror key. And this time I'm going to use this right here on the red side, on the right side. Makes it the opposite side. So say OK. Take this and then select these, each of them. And now hit the boolean tool or Q and say OK. Now keep a nice little cut inside and it's rounded inside, so you don't have to do any other work on that. Of course, unless you want to change it around. So now I'm going to take each of these edges, like I did last time, since it's rounded, it doesn't have a problem. That one, that one. Now let's pull it out a little bit. Again, it's on the positive. It's like a little bit of roundness to it. Say OK. That's it. So now I'm going to add in a center section into this thing. And the way to do that is just add a new circle. So let's bring that in right to the edge. Let's say probably, right there's good. Say OK. All right. Now I'm going to do is extrude that down. First hit the, of course, the face tool. Select it. Now hit the extrude. You can also hit E for extrude. And then just bring it down. Say OK. Okay. Now I'm going to hit this curve, delete it so it's out of my way. Now I'm going to select that object. Again, I'm going to hit the side tool so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to bring it down past this area here. So use the move tool. Something like that. Okay, so now I'm going to use the edge tool. hit this edge, and I'm going to go the negative this time, just the chamfer look, to give it a nice oomph to it. Say OK. Now I'll go back, and since I'm already here, I might as well do this, hit the edge tool. Now I'm going to fillet this, hit the plus, say OK. Alright, so that's that. So now I'm going to actually add in a cut into that too. So you can go in here, center again. I'm going to cut in about there. And I'll hit the face tool. First, so I'll say OK. Face tool. Select it. Bring it through. There we go. Say OK. And this time I'm going to say hit the object tool. Hit this one. Hit the Q. And I'm going to keep it. Say OK. Now I'm going to hit the line tool again. We're going to actually make it look like it's coming from that. Say OK. Alright, so that's that. So you can do some pretty cool shapes. Alright, so I'm going to add some sci-fi look to this. Basically what I'm doing is going to get rid of this edge here. Alright, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually bring this up. So I'm going to extend this up, get to a side, say OK. And again, I probably won't go that high, but that's okay. So now I'm going to use this tool here to kind of add some variations to this thing. So I'm going to hide a lot of this, just so it's out of the way. And at the end of it, I'm going to basically have a smaller tip out here. So I'll probably do something like this, kind of like, just give it a nice variety of look. Get it right along the line. Get some little bit of a cuts in here, like this, like that, like that. Keep it going. Okay. And then I'll bring it upward, see what I'm doing, and I'll go to the edge of that disc, so something like this, and I'm going to go all the way back up to reconnect it, so this way I can actually use this to cut it properly. So now that I made a full object, it's easier to rotate it around something. So now one thing I'm going to do is make sure that this is centered. So I'm going to take this curve and move it now, so it actually lines up with that line right there. All right, so I say OK. All right, so first of all, I'm going to hide these other things. Let's get this whole thing. Select these points. See, that's the problem, is this one here. It should not be there. Accidentally selecting that one. Hit these. Let's just do all of them. And then use this tool. And we're going to just go slide just a little bit. Like that. Now it's kind of rounded. Okay. Now if I select this and revolve, you can hit this and that. There we go. So that's good. You can't see what you're doing because it's not the ability to see. Now what you can do is you can go back and select this object, select this object, and we're going to do a boolean. There we go. Say OK. Cool. So now you got a tip. And get rid of this. There we go. That's the trick to do that. I got a little bit of issue here because I must have been off a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually put a hole in this anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I wanted it to be like a filler. So there's that. And then I'm going to hit this tool. Again, I'm going to extrude through. Right a bit through and say OK. Again, hit the object tool. So hit this, and then this with the shift key. Q for boolean. Say OK. And then again, I'll go over here and just kind of clean this up a little, get a little bit of a fillet. Being so small, you probably just go with the regular chamfer. I think that's fine. Okay, there's that. Cool. Now I'm probably going here and make this a little bit more round. That looks good. Get rid of this. So, well, of course, say OK. Now let's get rid of this. All right. See how that looks now with all these other objects. Okay, now I'm going to create another support to hold this thing up, and that should be it for the tip of this thing. All right, so let's go ahead and hide some of these objects. So what I'll do is I'll hide like the outer shell with an H key, and I'm going to keep this one. I can hide. I want to keep these two. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to go to the side view. I want to create something that will be like a support structure of some sort. I could do something like this. Something like that. And then I go through it. I can always adjust this afterwards. So we're going to do something like this. Like that. To give it a different shape. Okay, there's that. Now I'm going to go back in and adjust these things so I can hit the fillet tool, make it rounded. I'm going to say G, move it. I think I'm going to do something like that. Say OK. This one, you can just delete it. You don't need all these points. Hit the delete key. There you go. I will make these rounded just to make them rounded. And so. And then I'll do these. You can do them all at one time if you want, but sometimes I like to get a little bit of different look to each one. Like that. A little bit more organic that way. Hit the points. It's an easy way to go backwards, of course. So let's do this. And this one here we need to do. So it's a little bit rounded. Okay, now everything's rounded. So now you should be able to select the face tool here, extrude it. Say OK. And now we can delete this again. Delete. Now if you select this, you should be able to get the whole thing. I want to do both sides. But as you can tell, now everything's doing the right thing. So, all right. Let's just do this. You know, actually, it might look kind of cool having a sharp edge on this. Okay. Now we can go back in and say, I want to take this one, this one, this one, this one. I think I'll select all the edges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one too. And now what you can do is select it and make those rounded. There we go. Now the whole thing's nice and smooth. Yep. Alright, go back to this side view, X, and what we can do is add some variations to this. So we can just, what we can do is do a cut. Let's do something like this. Do a nice angle. Here we go. Hit the points. Just do all of them this time. And smooth it out. Here we go. Now we can say I want to select that, say through, say OK. Now we take this object, this one, and move it if you want. Select that. Now select this, select that. Hit the boolean or X tool, or, I'm sorry, Q tool. Get rid of the curve. Delete. Now we could actually go back in and now select this side and that side, and let's make that a little bit more rounded. Say OK. So that's cool. All right. So now I'm going to take this object and basically make copies of that around. I'm going to actually make sure this is centered on this object. So let's go to Z. See, it's not centered. That's the problem. So I'm going to take this object and move it so it's right aligned in the center, like that. I think it might be better too if I move this in a little bit, like that. There we go. Now I'll do a radial ray on this. Center. Go back to the Z. That looks good. So I'm going to select this. And then I'll go here, select the rest of them. Control, hit that one. And now I'm going to do the Q tool. And I'm going to say keep. Say OK. That's it. Now I'm going to select these. Hide those. Hide. There we go. And then I'm going to go in here and select these lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All 8 of them. Okay, now let's pull it out. You can do a chamfer or you can do a fillet. I'm going to go with the fillet. There we go. Now see, these are actually, I don't think I need any of these. This is just going to be a waste of part of the object. So let's unhide this first. Make sure it's not going to affect anything. Actually, delete. Delete. There we go. So let's go ahead and select these. Control that one. Hide those. What do we got here? Okay, so we do have the cuts. That looks cool. So now I can go in, select the edges of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. All 8 of them. Put that one too. And you can actually do a little bit. I'm going to go smaller than that. Way too big. Really small. Just to give it a little bit of edge. Cool. All right. So that's basically how I create these things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide these things in the center. So hit the object tool, hide those. Okay, here I'm going to show how to do the actual the cuts within this to make like a area to screw something on. And I basically hid everything within. And what I'm going to do now is create this by selecting this tool. I'm going to go to the Z, hit the center, and then I'm going to go upward on the Y or the X, and we're going to go and click in the top there in the center, and we're going to bring this out. One thing we want to make sure we do is we want to kind of get close to the inner, like that. So one thing I'm going to do is add more iterations on this. So we're going to make this, I think we're going to do double. We'll go with 8. So I'm just going to hit 8 tab. And one thing I want to make sure is that I'm going to bring this up just a little bit. We want a little bit of sections here, so the actual tube will actually look like it's coming around, cutting in and out of this thing properly. So we'll do that. So say OK. So now let's do the pipe tool. And this is be way too big, so that's why it's going to be a problem here. So I'm going to backspace that, make that a 1 to start off with. Hit the tab and see what happens. So that's pretty good. That's close to the edge here. I'm good with that. So say OK. Now what I'm going to do is select the object, and now I'm going to bring it in or down. Just cut through all this, just like that. Okay, you can get rid of this curved line so it doesn't distract you. This one too. Alright, so one thing that will help get a nice look to this is to either add the edge here and make it more smooth. So I'm going to actually do a little bit of a fillet on this. About like that. There we go. Say OK. And that way this will give it a nice edge. So now what I'll do is I'm going to select this object and this object, and again hit the Q key, say OK. That gives you a nice little cut. Oh, that's cool. From the distance it's really hard to see that, but yeah, that's the way it can rotate around and get into that. And one more thing I want to do to this object is get rid of the hard edge along all these sections here. So again, I'm going to just hit each of these separately. All I need to do is select every one of these, one side of it, and you'll be good. Okay, and pretty much almost there. So every one of these is now almost selected. Okay, got every one of those selected now. Now we can actually go in and just make a little bit of a radius to those so it's nice and smooth. Say OK. And another thing you can do is add the actual the pipe extending out of this, or the tube, if you want to. I'm going to say OK. What I'm going to do, I got this selected now. I'm going to hit Shift D, and I'll move this inward, and then I'm going to hit this tool here. Say OK. Hit that. Make sure this is selected, and I'm going to basically drag that out now. That gives you your tube. So that is basically how I create these things. Sci-fi connectors for hoses. Please subscribe if you like this video. It helps me continue to make these things. If you want to join my Patreon page, there's a link on this page that helps me continue to also make this stuff and to give some of these objects away. for you to use to work with. As I go along building this, you can look at the examples of it. Well, thank you.